Let's get started. Maybe we can do a brief introduction, then we go through the topic.
Sure. Would you like
Okay.
to start?
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Salma Noun. I am Business and Digital Strategy Manager within Sia Partners. I lead the Data and AI Strategies department, including the Metaverse and Web3. I started working in Accenture in France, then came to Dubai, as well as KPMG, so mainly consulting firms. Other than that, I have an extensive experience in the Metaverse, Web3, and leading large-scale programs at a national level, especially in Saudi, as well as data-driven and AI strategies. For instance, I've led the data and AI strategy development in Saudi Arabia. So it was a 10 years strategic roadmap development. And I've also led the data privacy law in Saudi Arabia. As my background, I have an engineering background, and I am passionate about emerging technologies. So that's why I choose this topic, because it's really something that I, believe that will be the future. And yeah, what about you?
Thank you. So, Ash Patel. I started out my career as a wireless architect for the Royal Air Force in the UK. But for the last 15 years, I have been working with Microsoft partners, as well as AWS more recently, building out public cloud solutions and services for companies, looking at developing SaaS-based services or monthly recurring revenue-based services. So more on the business, less on the technical recently. Right now, I work with an organization called EscherCloud, and part of what we do is deliver highly sustainable AI infrastructure that's designed and built ground up with AI in mind. And the reason for that is a big part of my passion is how we use tech in a sustainable way for the future generations yet to come. And I firmly believe that technology is the answer to solving our world's problems today and tomorrow. But how do we do that without ruining our world at the same time? And Metaverse, potentially, in our view, so I share your passion, allows us to create and really have our ideation come to fruition without the impact from a carbon perspective.
Great. Okay, so to start with, I would like to take this topic from a perspective of understanding what are the benefits, the opportunities when it comes to the pillars of openness, accessibility, and safety in the metaverse and Web3 in general. And the reason why I would like to see more the potential is that usually when we talk about Web3 and metaverse, we see the bad side, the risks, the challenges, because it's a new topic, right? So now I think it's crucial to see also what's the potential of the metaverse and Web3. And in order for us to do that, I think the best way to do it is to see the evolution of the internet developments from Web 1 to Web 2 to the Web 3. And the evolution of those pillars across the Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, because the Web 1 was more of reading information only, so just about content sharing. The Web 2, it was more of reading and writing, because now we share content, create content, comment, etc. While the Web 3, it's adding another layer, which is the ownership. And the ownership is something, amazing that we can leverage. So that's something I want to highlight before we start, deep dive into these pillars of openness, safety, and accessibility.
Sounds good.
Great. So to start with, when we talk about the openness, for me, the internet started with Web 1, where, again, we were creating content. It's about sharing content in a one-way direction, so there is no interaction, right? while in the Web 2, we see that people can interact each other, it enables more content creation, etc. So we become more open. Yeah? So this marked really the beginning of the principle of openness. And the Web 3, it's take this openness principle to the next level by enabling peer-to-peer interactions without any control of central authority controlling the whole network. And this is giving us the opportunity to share content, etc., but not only with individuals, but also with digital assets. So we're not only interacting with individuals, but also with digital objects, etc., etc. So yeah, that's a great, the pillar of openness we'll see more light, let's say, when in the Web3.
I would say that. I think, when control is a key part, right? The more control that you get given access to, the more responsibility you have.
Yes.
And I think part of that responsibility is a driver on how open, how safe, and how accessible things can and can't be. Mm-hmm. It becomes a very opinionated subject, doesn't it, at that point, around how much control does one get versus how much responsibility that you then have as a net result. And when you get movies like Ready Player One, if you're familiar with that, it doesn't help the cause of the perception of the metaverse and creates a misconception about how it can be run and how it is unsecure and how it's uncontrolled, yet with the right governance, compliance, and ultimately ethical and moral responsibility, you can use it for good. To touch on the subject that we had earlier, that's my view, is the control and the responsibility.
Exactly. And there is something also that we need to take into account is the data privacy aspects or the safety. Let's talk about safety. So safety was not a major concern when we were back to the Web 1 because again, it's content sharing, right? With the Web 2, we start sharing our data as individuals. We share our personal data, etc. So that's why we see that our different laws that came. For example, the GDPR. Each country is implementing its law when it comes to the data, right? Because it's scary to know that your data is held by big companies, etc. They can process it, they can deliver insights, etc. on behalf of you. With the Web 3, the good thing is that this will change because all the data privacy laws that we see in the Web 2 will not apply anymore. You are part of the controller. You control your data. You own your data and you are accountable of your data. So to your point, yes, the ownership parts will become more and more important with the Metaverse and Web 3. And this is, for me, I see it as a good opportunity for the individuals because we will feel like in a safer environment. But again, this is debatable. We will see all the regulations that will come in the future because they are not there yet, but they are building that, right? So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think with the openness and the safety side, we have to try and figure out a way to embrace the creative input. So, I mean, a big part of what makes a metaverse useful and successful are the creative designers that are making said digital world as attuned to the reality as possible. These are not, they're not technologists in the traditional sense. You have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers adding their inputs, their data points to create, your digital twins or whatever the use case might be in the metaverse. But without the governance compliance to tie everything together, then right now it's a very difficult place to try and create those rules and those standards, and it's down to the individuals as it stands. So maybe going forwards, creating frameworks that people can work by. I worked with a very large automotive manufacturer in Germany, and they wanted to create a digitized version of their manufacturing plant, but they had an assumption that it had to sit in Germany, that the data had to sit in Germany, yet every one of their creative designers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, the mechanics themselves, and everyone within their supply chain and logistics that were involved in the process, not a single one of them was actually based in Germany. So there's got to be a balance around what is the right approach versus what is the assumed approach.
Yeah, 100%. And also, again, I think this goes also with what you've mentioned just now. For the accessibility, we see that the Web3 will take this principle to the next level by building a decentralized applications that are accessible to anyone from anywhere in the world, right? Compared to the Web 2, again, I like to compare the Web 3 to Web 2 to really see the potential. In Web 2, we can see that there are some applications that are accessible in a country that we cannot access into when we are in other countries. For example, China, they have their own applications centralized within, a central entity, but they said that it cannot be accessed if you are not in the country. So they have their proper laws, their proper rules, etc. And this will not happen again in the Web3 or the Metaverse, where all the decentralized applications can be accessed by anyone in the world from anywhere. So this is another point that I wanted to talk about. And also it gives an immersive experience to the people with disabilities. The virtual reality, extended reality, etc., will give the opportunity to these people to interact with objects, etc., while they couldn't do it before, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. We see it a lot in oil and gas, to be specific to this region, for safety and training. So we see a lot of digital twins being created for something as simple as a heat pump, or something as complex as an entire city, but it's accessible by anyone across the globe that has the right skill sets to be able to then learn what are the right levers to push in the right scenarios, and using the digitized version of whatever the thing is, you're able to run scenarios and simulations much quicker and much faster and much better, more accurately, from a cost perspective, sustainability perspective, than in the real world. Think about the logistics of having everyone in the same place, shutting down a whole plant just to train some people pushing the right buttons. To replicate that in a simulated environment means it can be a lot more accurate, a lot more quicker, but also flexible around where they need to be. As well as that, in terms of the accessibility, there's a balance of making use of the benefits of a metaverse, which in its own right can sit wherever it needs to be and accessible from wherever it needs to be. So if we're starting to restrict the accessibility, you're almost then restricting the benefits and limiting on why it's there in the first place. So we've got to figure out what the right balance is in terms of making it as accessible as possible within reasonable limitations of not, being counterintuitive or counterproductive to what the technology can actually then do, right? Why not make use of it, basically?
Yes, 100%. And I think you highlighted also a good point. We need to be responsible, ethical, and sustainable while building, those features in the metaverse. So this is something we need to take into account. Yes, it is an immersive environment. It is a collaborative, inclusive, etc. But we need to act as ethical, responsible while developing that. Again, to your point, yes, it enables the accessibility part, but we need also to think about the bad side. We want people to continuously work and do, the stuff like that. But yeah, it's a very valid point.
But just a question to you, actually. What has made you get into the metaverse piece? Because it's quite a relatively new technology.
Yes.
And I've not met a lot of people that are working in it, let alone know what it means.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, again, I am very passionate about emerging technologies. It's a new topic, right? So I was very curious about knowing what's inside, what's the metaverse, what is Web3 as a whole, not only key blocks. Like, for example, they talk about blockchain for many years, and now that this topic became a hot topic, I really wanted to know what's there, what's the potential, what we can build in this new environment. So and I think that there are a lot of opportunities there. And as I have an engineering background, so the thoughts that I have in IT technologies, etc. Again, I worked a lot with data and AI for government entities in Saudi Arabia, etc. So again, we work a lot on those technologies, etc. So we see the potential for the citizens as well. And I think that the Metaverse and Web3 will be the future. And also, just to finish what I want to say, so I'm working on writing a book that talks about the potential of AI and the Metaverse, so both, because I think that's, again, it's my belief, the Metaverse cannot survive without AI. So both of them are, the future, and that's something I'm working on, and highlighting the potential, etc. Anyway, so you will see maybe in the next year the new book that I will be releasing.
No, that's fantastic. That's really cool. It's funny you say that. So I've come across a project in the Netherlands. And the municipality within Amsterdam is looking to build some new social housing. And they've come up with a concept where they would like to create a digital twin of this development. And they want to provide access to the future residents of this development to provide their input in how they wish that development to be, and how they wish to live their lives, what they want, what they would need. And I think that's so cool with the feedback that they're getting from these individuals. They're actually going to have an input in where they're going to live their lives, and their children are going to live their lives. I think without the possibilities of the metaverse to try and replicate that through advisory boards, roundtables, it's just not the same. So I can get where you come from, and we look forward to the book.
Yeah. Nice. Great. So also, I think when we talk about metaverse, etc., we need also to highlight, for the safety aspects, the blockchain, right? I don't know if you're also familiar with this infrastructure of blockchain, etc. I think that the infrastructure will make it more safe and secure. So we need also to keep that in mind. Because, for example, attackers or hackers, they will not be able to access to the network if they don't have control over a great portion of the network, to attack the environments. So I just wanted to highlight that, just because we talked about openness, the accessibility, but the safety. Again, people are not confident about if it's going to be safe, etc., regardless of personal data, etc. But here it's more about, is the data that I share, is it protected? And yes, the answer would be yes, it is, because there is a layer that will enable this protection.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it comes down to design principles, and it's a foundational concept that's not new. If you were going to build a house and you were designing the house, you'd design the house with a front door that has a lock on it. Otherwise, how would you secure your house? Why would you build a house with a front door that doesn't exist, or a portal that allows you to go through for anyone to access? But we don't really highlight that principle when it comes to building houses, do we? So yet, when we talk about building infrastructure, building in the network operations, the security layers, it has to be a fundamental, foundational principle that is embedded at the very beginning, and continually improving as it's developed and developing, and and making sure that continuous development occurs throughout the life cycle of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And without those principles, you put yourself at risk.
Exactly.
And so actually then at that point, if it's not going to be secure, it's not going to be useful, and at some point it's not going to work very well.
100%.
So they've got to be baked in at the very beginning in the same way that we build those principles into other industries and other means of work that we do.
Yeah.
You know, you get into your car, most cars these days when you start driving, they lock, you know. But if those locks weren't designed in the first place, you weren't going to lock your car. So I think the principles align.
Exactly, yeah. 100%. So yeah, I think we talked about the safety aspects, the accessibility. For the openness, I would like to add one more point that's for me is also key and important, and it goes back again to the ownership principle. Basically, what I really like in the metaverse is the fact that as individuals, we will be participating in the growth and the developments of the applications. What I mean by that is today the applications are there, they are developed, and we are sharing content, using them, etc., for our own purpose. Tomorrow in the metaverse or the Web3, there will be decentralized applications where actually we can have a voice, where we can vote, you know, these features, I don't like it, I would like to change this and that. So this becomes more interesting for the people, right? So
Absolutely.
We are part of the whole evolution, of the whole development of these applications. So we own a piece of internet. That's really amazing.
Coming back to the point, ownership equates to responsibility. So it's great that we're empowering everyone to be able to access and be creative and own a piece of the puzzle, so to speak, whatever the puzzle may be. And embracing that, for me, is really important because it's embracing the creativity of the individuals. We're all human by nature, unique. We're not the same.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us so good, you know, and in some cases, bad. But those are things, you know, we can't control, but we can govern.
Yeah.
And the same principles apply in my perspective, in the projects that are created in the metaverse, whether they be for commercial use or private, personal, you know, gaming or otherwise. The embracing people's creativity is what's going to make the metaverse more successful than anything else, that creative element.
Exactly. And how do you see also the merge between AI and metaverse, or for example, when you talk about digital twins? I think there would be a lot of use cases.
We already see it. It's not new technology in terms of digital twins. What's new about it now, or more recently, is the added factor of AI, whether it's generative or not, to be able to simulate scenarios. You know, the best example that we've all experienced over the past few years is the development of the COVID vaccine. And I don't think anyone on the planet has gone through seeing a vaccine being developed in real time as we have with the coverage across the COVID vaccine development and the different companies that are, you know, essentially racing to try and develop the best vaccine first. And a lot of that development took place in digital environments, you know, trying to replicate the genome sequencing to try and understand how to develop that vaccine, if it is even a vaccine or a cure. You know, but the process upon which it went through and the speed upon which it went through can only be credited through the use of the algorithms that were developed to be able to produce the outcomes. And here we are all today in this room as a net result of that vaccine, ultimately, to end the pandemic. And that as a concept, as an idea, and as an example going forwards, if we can create simulated versions of reality to make everything better, but to do it quicker, to do it faster, safer, save more lives, ultimately from almost an infrastructure perspective as well, we're seeing a lot of the AI replicate real-world human activities, take retail or residential developments. If you wanted to do an environmental study, a traffic analysis, an energy assessment, water assessment, these would take time, it would take people, it would cost a lot of carbon with the actual exercises it would take. If we can mitigate that and replace them with digitized versions and share that data and make it open data so that other companies, other development organizations, local municipalities, civil engineering firms, people can access that data and use that data to then make improvements without adding more carbon to what has already been added. Through the use of AI, I think that can only be a good thing, and it can only get better. And touching on what we said earlier, it's about control, and whomever creates those algorithms, the ethics and the moral standards behind those will govern how that algorithm's going to run. But it comes back to then the creativity. Let's embrace the creativity, not restrict it.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. So I think that's, again, mixing both the Web3 metaverse and the AI will really accelerate the whole, I think, the evolution of everything. And there are a lot of use cases that we can see in education, in healthcare, in different sectors that will really enable accelerate our learning. When you see use cases in medicine, for example, you see that they can see the whole, the learning parts of medicine that is not, is completely different from the classic way of learning. That's what I want to say. So yeah, I mean, if you have any other use cases that you can share, it will be good. But for me, the education aspect is one of the key sectors that will be impacted by this topic.
You mean touching on that? So, as humans, we adapt, right? Somebody mentioned it earlier today. It's our nature. We evolve, and our industries are evolving, and I think we're at the inflection point, if not beyond, of that technological revolution, where AI is now becoming the norm. And one of the things that we learned through COVID was how do our children get educated without being in a classroom? And so, the concept of, well, what if we created a virtual classroom and children could access that classroom and learn remotely, but yet collectively, because the collaboration is a really important part of learning.
Yes.
Yet we have to do that from home. And we learned that the hard way, and a lot of people struggled. It's not human nature to be by ourselves. Yet we adapted, and yet our children were able to go to lessons and study, and people were able to go and do what they did, but in a different way. And using that different way, we also learned, well, actually, there are some cases where it's a better way, and we could collaborate more. You have auto-translate functions, so you can have people from different backgrounds, cultures, languages, all communicating and working together in a single environment. People of all walks of life, and also from an economic background. Everything was a level playing field because it was accessible. The diversity was immense. All of these things were highlighted because of what we had to do, and in some cases, where I'm from, the metaverse actually helped certain children that had a real difficulty working from home and adapting to that process to actually then adapt to that process. Now, you take that concept and apply it longer term. Maybe going forward, we've always had internet universities, internet colleges, online courses, but now we have a more collaborative way of learning and understanding and doing more for less, to put it bluntly from someone's point earlier. So the possibilities are endless. Like it blows me away to think about what kind of ideas and what kind of things people do. It's just a shame that unfortunately it usually takes a significant event or a circumstance for us to come across and think about how do we solve that problem to create a better solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of the things or the topic that I'm working on for the book. So it's basically around this use cases showing, the great potential that Metaverse and AI are creating for individuals, and especially for this generation, that it's eager to learn. We are a generation that is okay with the AI. AI will not be, it shouldn't scare us, right? It's not replacing us. This is, again, I believe that it's not a replacement of humanity. It's completely wrong to say that. For me, it's really about enabling us as individuals and empowering us to go to the next level and show more capabilities compared to before. So that's, again, the highlight of the book, but it's something that we need to take into account while talking about this topic.
I really look forward to the book.
Thank you.
How are we for time, by the way? I can't see. We good? Okay. Should we do questions?
Yes, let's go for maybe we can see if they have any questions for the audience.
Any questions? Thoughts, opinions? Please.
Hi, my name is Tanya Singh. I'm actually here representing a knowledge transfer business, which is called the 30-Minute University of Planning. My partner is based out of Germany, and I also represent the TMT vertical at KPMG, and I'm a judge for the United Nations Health Prize in Boston. So just wanted to clarify the difference in time zones that I work across. My question can be answered by either of Ash and Salma, and please feel free to tell me in case you don't have visibility, but help us understand. We wrote a paper on the metaverse and its applications over time, specifically for countries like India, wherein a lot of the part of the industrial manufacturing or services is outsourced. How do you see that application more from an industrial design perspective? So very core industries, right? Apart from the use cases, the early use cases that we've seen retail and education adopt. But how do you really expect, without a very robust ecosystem at the point, unless the world runs at the same speed, would we be able to apply interconnected supply chains more from a developing nation standpoint? Thank you.
Sure. Do you mind?
Yes.
So it's a great example, but in our case, or my experience specifically, a lot of the benefits that are being utilized by using technology such as the metaverse in core industry technologies in certain areas like you mentioned are being able to create simulations to replicate real world scenarios to see how to operate, well, let me rephrase that, how to build, maintain and operate environments within that industrial environment to be as efficient, as optimized as possible, but also to also take into account environmental factors to then make best use of the land around it, the environmental elements, heat, weather, pollution, that you can then take all of those data points and apply them to all the work that the designers, the engineers, the mechanics, even the civil servants that are then going to work on the project to be able to analyze and understand before they even start digging a hole. And we've seen a lot of impact from that as a concept. So my point on the heat pump, for example, understanding what is the right kind of heat pump and creating digital assets. Well, heat pumps are not new. There are many of them out there and have been. The digital and the data footprints of those heat pumps, we have libraries of those, taking that data point and implementing it into a metaverse engine, using whatever software is appropriate, alongside the creative designers, alongside the individuals that are actually going to be utilizing the plants or whatever it is that the industry is doing, whether it's be agri-tech or manufacturing, to actually then create a better outcome, a better product, a better solution, a better factory, whatever the end outcome is. But using the data points, implementing into Metaverse, creating a simulated version, and then understanding what works, what doesn't work, how do we make it better? Is there something already out there that somebody's already created in another country that has the same environmental factors that we can learn lessons from? Can we improve on it? How do we make the best use of it? And then coming back to the end outcome of how do we make that better for then the local individuals that will then need to work there? Can we create simulated environments to train them up during the build process, get them to be as efficient as possible from an employment perspective, retrain, reskill local skills, local individuals to be able to use that plant, use that environment, whatever it may be. And so it really opens up the creative opportunities on making that particular area as good and as best as it can be to make the best use of whatever it is within that space of, in terms of the use case. Typically manufacturing, we see that a lot in terms of maximizing the floor space. How do you put what machine where, and who do you need to operate what? And all of those questions typically can only be answered after it's been built, after it's run, after you get some data points. But by which point, moving things around, changing things, that's an incredible cost factor, especially for certain countries and certain areas and certain industries in today's climate. So removing those factors and doing all the studies up front and implementing them in the design principles at the beginning, that's really where we're seeing a lot of the use cases and a lot of the benefits. And that's only one. Does that make sense?
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. Really, really interesting. So I'm John Golding. I work for a international aggregator in the travel technology space. But what I was really interested from a metaverse perspective was, Ash, you were speaking about the ethical responsibility that is required. And I guess my question to both of you guys is how do you believe that will actually, how do you believe ethics will be enforced in that space without a sort of a overall governing authority, if you will, like a government of sorts? Yeah, how do you believe that's going to play out, and how do we ensure that it doesn't become a world of trolls, if you will?
Good phrase, I like that phrase.
Yes, you can start maybe and then.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, to reiterate what I said earlier, right? One of the things I think is important for the success of the metaverse is embracing our individuality and our creativity. And with that comes then the risk of everyone having a different opinion. And some people see that as a bad thing. I see that as a good thing. And typically, we live in a world and a society where we as experts, and we are the experts, where society will look upon us to provide our guidance and our advice on what we think is right and what we think is wrong. But at the same time, who are we to decide what we think is right and wrong, to say it is right and wrong? Who is? I think the only way around that right now in this world that we live in right now is collaboration and communication, as well as awareness and education. And if we collectively keep working together and talking to each other and communicating, you're writing a book,
Exactly.
white papers, framework agreements, guidelines. In the UK, we are developing the government is developing an ethics policy around AI. Who are we to say that is going to be right and that's going to be wrong? Who's going to write it? These are all unknowns and uncertain elements, because part of what we do is kind of revolution and it's changing the industry, and not many people like change because change is scary. So we've got to just talk to each other and try and educate each other, because we all come from different walks, different backgrounds. And the other parts of the expertise come from people not in the tech industry: mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, scientists, data scientists, medical professionals, civil servants, regular human beings that are living their daily lives that have nothing to do with technology whatsoever. We've all got to come together and kind of discuss it as a subject collectively, but it's got to be based on each use case. We've got to figure out what is the right approach for the right problem, for the right solution. And I think if we keep doing that over time, we'll get better at it. There will be some common grounds, as somebody mentioned earlier. And that common ground can then create our foundation. But beyond our foundation, we've got to be embraceful of then the creativity. Think about buildings and architects. We don't want to restrict architects from creating beautiful buildings. But we do have, over time, governance and guidelines on design principles, making sure that building is not going to fall down, making sure it is built safe, making sure all those people that are working on the building are adhering to safety protocols, health and safety protocols. The same principles apply to when we build our environments, whether it be technical or digital or otherwise. There's principles we need to make sure are right at the foundational stage, but they're no different to what we already have today in building SaaS applications, whether it be a customer relationship management system or a database. Principles are there. We learn those from the beginning. But what it does, how it's going to be used, that's the creative side, and I don't think we should limit that.
Yes, absolutely, and maybe just to add another layer on that. So yes, it is a decentralized environment, etc. But there will be, of course, authorities and central authorities to regulate those topics. For example, we can see the VERA, Virtual Asset Regulation Authority here in the UAE, that will regulate this. So these regulations, these authorities are here upfront before we start developing those technologies, etc., so that they can control also the ethical aspect, the responsibility, and the sustainability. So I hope this answers your question. Perfect.
Quick question to everyone here. Put hands up if you know what the metaverse is or you think you know what the metaverse is. Okay. I highly recommend you watch a movie called Ready Player One, and then you'll understand what the metaverse is. Just take it with a pinch of salt, though.
Great.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.